It is Monday, December 30th, 2024. This is the last 2024 edition of Football Today. It is presented to you by Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL. These are my dudes, Justin Penik, Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose, producer Connor, putting it all together as well. Do I see happy faces because the Giants snapped a 10-game losing streak? Or do I see sad faces because we're not going to get the number one overall pick without trading up? Penik, are you okay?
Well, there's just chaos. There's chaos on the internet. People are mad at Bobby. People are mad at me.
Wait, why'd they mad at you guys?
Yeah, because Rose, we have a lot to do with what happens on the field, and I was at the stadium, so God forbid I get excited for a half of like, oh wow, my team's actually scoring points, and then reality kind of sets in about, oh wow, look at what they're actually doing. So yeah, a little bit of chaos in Giants land, and they're going to keep a GM who's going to be desperate to trade up for said quarterback that they really want.
Bobby,
Terrific.
you okay? Are you even talking to me?
I'm still ready. I'm just ready for Black Monday as a Giants fan. For this show, I'm excited to get into playoff football. Like, I want to fast forward through this week and just get to some playoff football because I think this is going to be a very interesting year.
Okay, well, let's start it off with our La Vida Más Fina game of the week. It is brought to you by Corona. We had football on seemingly every day of the week. We had a couple games on Wednesday. We had Thursday. We skipped Friday. We got 3 for Saturday and then a ton on Sunday. So let's break it down. That game of the week is going to be the middle game of Saturday's triple header action, which we had on NFL Network. The Bengals season staying alive and helping the Miami Dolphins stick around as well. They were a 30-24 overtime winner over the Denver Broncos. Forget about kicking the ball in overtime. They tried that once with Cade York. It didn't work out. So Joe Burrow just threw a third touchdown pass to T. Higgins, ends up throwing for 412 yards. Most importantly, they keep the Bengals' playoff hopes alive. I know that the Bills might be terrified of that proposition. The Chiefs might be terrified of that proposition. But NFL fans who don't have a dog in the fight in the AFC are loving it. Don't you think, Bobby?
Oh, that's where I'm at, right? And I do want to see the Bengals make it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't believe in the Bengals. I think this is cruel and unusual that we're keeping them alive because that passing offense sure is good. But in reality is they are not a team that is built for it. But yeah, I think you ask every single person who doesn't have rooting interest in the Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals who they want to see in the playoffs, everyone's going to say Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Are the Bengals not the kings of, they can win a football game like 3 or 4 times in the same game and then also lose the game? Are they not the kings of that this year, Rose?
Yeah, they are. I mean, you go back and look at, I mean, is there a worse loss this season than week 1, New England going into Cincinnati and beating the Bengals? I don't think that there's a worse loss by any team. I mean, you have to go all the way to the very start of the season. And right then, even though that was probably more on the offense than on the defense that day, because I want to say it was something like 16-10 or something like that.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of set the tone, I thought, for the entire Bengals season. With all of that being said, just so that people are kind of up to date on where things stand, once again, for Denver, it's the second straight week, win and in. They're going to host Kansas City, who we think is going to sit everybody, but you never know. And because of the football numbers, you can't sit everybody. Then Miami's next in line. They have to win a road game at the Jets, just like they did at Cleveland to stick around. So if Denver loses and Miami wins, then it's Miami. And if both Denver and Miami lose and Cincinnati beats Pittsburgh in the nightcap on Saturday's doubleheader action, then it's the Bengals that end up getting in there. I will tell you this. Joe Burrow is playing at such an elite level. It seems like everything he does works out perfectly. I mean, this 2-month run that he's been on, there have been very few quarterbacks in the history of the sport that have been as fluid, that have been as driven, that have operated an offense as efficiently and expertly as Joe Burrow has. And it's such a shame because you can hear it almost weekly in his press conferences, how frustrated he is because he knows that he and Jamar Chase are at the top of their game and might not ever be better together. And it's all going down the drain because the defense stinks.
He's having an MVP season, Rose. Like, if they had won 2 more games, like, we're talking about Joe Burrow versus Lamar, right?
Hmm.
I think Josh Allen actually goes out of the conversation because now you have the possibility of a first time winner in Joe Burrow and what they're doing, but this is the situation that they're in, and this defense is just so bad though, right?
It's bad.
It's like even as much as I really really want to see a Bills Bengals first round, that'd be awesome to see. It's an elite quarterback matchup, but the reality is the Bengals are 1-7 against teams above 500, their first one being the Broncos, and 7-1 against teams below 500. The above 500 teams are averaging 35 points per game against them. Like, that was their best defensive performance on Saturday against an above 500 team, was the Broncos scoring 24. And the quarterbacks they've beaten this year are Andy Dalton, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson, Gardner Minshew, Cooper Rush, Mason Rudolph, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Bo Nix. Like, they are not a team that's capable of making a playoff run. And I don't know how you try and correct this as the Cincinnati Bengals, but it is a disgrace that their quarterback is having an MVP season, and their wide receivers having offensive player of the year type season, and then T. Higgins goes out and does what he does, and they're most likely going to be on the outside looking in.
They do play these. The only pushback that I'll give is they don't get their ass kicked by these 500 teams. The only team that they really got their ass kicked by was Philly, which I think was 37-17, and I think maybe one of those games
beat them pretty deep. Well, but here's the thing: is they give up 35 plus every time.
Correct, and that's the issue. That's the most, like, if I were a Bengals fan and I had to watch, and I can't believe, yes, I am saying this as a Giants fan, but if I had to watch this defense every single week while also watching this offense, like, the dichotomy of that would make me go gray and I would rip out my hair. It's unbelievable watching this team.
I just want to talk a little bit about Saturday's game.
You did a great job, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That was a lot of fun.
I thought in particular Darius Davis touchdown was a very good call.
Oh, thank you. I wish the Patriots would have done just as good a job. Well, thank you for showing up.
Same here, buddy.
So in that Cincinnati game, Zach Taylor and Sean Payton, we have to send all these coaches to clock management school, right?
Raheem Morris, too.
Chase Brown basically blows out his ankle trying to make sure that the Bengals don't score and they can run the clock down. And then the next play, Joe Burrow goes into the end zone and he's grittying. And in the meantime, given the Denver Broncos basically 90 seconds to march down the field, they score with less than 10 seconds to go. They go into overtime. And the reason that Sean Payton didn't go for 2 at the end of regulation was because, well, I knew that a tie would be just as good as a win and get us into the playoffs. So what does he do when he gets the ball a second time? He mismanages the clock and gives Joe Burrow another shot with 90 seconds left to try and march down the field. Like, what? Can anybody explain what happens to these coaches? Do we all have to get them new watches? What is this?
I think it's simply there's just so much on their plate that
it's so in the moment
that they just, like, you got to make it like split decision, and then once they haven't made it in that split decision, you're like, all right, well, I already wasted 3 seconds. I might as well save whatever timeout I have or whatever. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Raheem Morris on Sunday night was unbelievable.
Oh, God.
That one is unbelievable, and I think it's one of those things that we talk about a lot because it's one of the things that we actually can do better than NFL head coaches. But it is mind-numbing every time that you see it. But what do you think about Bo Nix in this performance? That throw.
He had a couple of them.
65 air yards.
Isn't that like the second most in the next gen era?
Yes, it was the second most in the next gen era. So that's since 2016. But yeah, I think officially our stats guys told us 67, which I can't.
So where are you at, like, with Bo Nix and all? Because he's had a very good rookie season. There's all he obviously came in older, and there's the first month of the season was really bad, and he's got better. But then in the playoff and the overtime, you're like, make that throw, and he just had misses that cost them the game.
Right, and is that something that's correctable down the road? I'm just going to judge it in a vacuum. I don't like to not take a bigger picture scope of things. I think he's done a remarkable job.
Yeah,
I think the fact that they have had the inside track to the playoffs with 2 weeks ago says a ton about him. I think it will affect the way that evaluators look at older quarterbacks in college football, right? I mean, Cam Ward's one of those guys. I don't think people are going to be afraid of him bouncing around to 3 different schools and getting all these starts. So good for him. I think he's done a great job, and I'll give Sean Payton some credit. I was critical of him at the beginning of the year where I said that he didn't really find Drew Brees or develop Drew Brees. I mean, he did develop him from the sense that they had a wonderful marriage together, but that he lucked into Drew Brees because nobody else wanted him. But I think that Sean Payton's done a really good job with that kid, and more importantly, the kid has done a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially where the first month of the season, I mean, they were averaging 10 points per game.
Yeah.
And I know our next question is like biggest surprise. Like I think the Broncos are right there, right there with it. I mean, we had them like 31st in our preseason power rankings.
I think that's all fair. So that was our game of the week. It was brought to you by Corona. You know what we always try and be around here? A fan that never loses. So here's what we mean. My team doesn't always win every single night. Bobby and Justin's does when it comes to meaningless games on Sunday.
Winning streak.
When we all lose, we still love the game because whether it's a big deep ball or a conversion of 3rd and 4th and short or just a great tailgate like Justin was enjoying out at the stadium parking lot, there's always something to cheer for. And the best beer to pair with those awesome moments, it is Corona. Corona's all about finding the maximum amount of joy with every moment of the game. Win or lose, at home or on the road, it is the perfect beer to go along with watching football and all the moments that come along with it. So cheers to everyone who loves the game beyond the scoreboard. Corona, for the fan who never loses. Get yours at ordercorona.com for 21 and over. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. All right, we continue on, and the last game of the regular season will be for the entire thing in the NFC North for the 1 seed to make sure you don't fall to the 5 seed and head on the road wild card weekend. That's because the Minnesota Vikings took care of the Green Bay Packers 27-25. That rendered Detroit's Monday night road game at San Francisco meaningless. So week 18, it's Minnesota at Detroit. In your opinion, Bobby, are the 14-2 Vikings the biggest surprise in the NFL this year?
I think the Commanders are, but the Vikings are right there. I just thought the Commanders' secondary would not allow them to win, even if Jaden Daniels had a great rookie season. But the Vikings are right there. I thought about the Broncos too, but I think that was more so they were averaging 10 points per game in the first 4 weeks, and I didn't think they'd turn it around offensively. I mean, Darnold's 4th in touchdowns. He's 4th in interceptions as well, 4th in yards. They're playing for the number 1 seed. Like, I definitely could have seen them vying for the playoffs, right? Because this Vikings team is so talented and well coached. But it is unreal what they're doing. I mean, Andrew Van Ginkel's it should be in Defensive Player of the Year voting after, they lost Danielle Hunter, and we thought that was going to be a huge loss. Grenard's been good for them. Sam Darnold, which I don't know what they're going to do with him, has been really good. Like, you talk about the Vikings offense putting quarterbacks in the right position to maximize, but he's maximized it just as much, if not better, than any quarterback that they've had. Is this better than what they got out of, their, Kirk Cousins time there? It's probably pretty similar. Kirk Cousins is someone who just got paid 4 years, $180 million off of a torn Achilles.
Yeah. Well, now it's being complemented with an elite defense, and that's
Correct.
probably I'd say the Vikings are the most surprising team because of how dominant they are. Whereas, you could make a case for, Broncos and Bo Nix, Bo Nix being efficient and finding a path, and that Broncos pass rush being good. You could have told me that in preseason, I would have believed you, because I thought the Broncos pass rush heading into the season was underrated. But just how dominant, and even the Commanders, like Jaden Daniels has a path with his running and the way that they're able to run the ball there, but that defense still isn't good. But again, they're dominant on both sides of the ball. And how I think really what it comes down to against the Packers for me, just kind of watching that game over, look at what the Vikings are doing on 1st and 2nd down to, number 1, avoid 3rd down. And then number 2, when they get to 3rd down, it's 3rd and short. Like that Sam Darnold touchdown throw to Jordan Addison, that happens on 1st down, where Darnold steps up in the pocket to avoid 1 or 2 pass rushers. He has a check down in Aaron Jones right in front of him, so you could take that check down, and then you can, just stay on schedule. I want to avoid the sack. I want to avoid the negative play. But instead, Darnold steps up, finds Jordan Addison. I believe it's split safety coverage, puts that ball over the top for Jordan Addison. That's a 1st and 10. That's an awesome 1st down play. And what the Packers were doing, you get involved in some 3rd and longs, and then that's where Brian Flores has fun. That's where Brian Flores gets 8 quarterback hits, and I think three sacks on the day as well. So that's where guys and that's where that defense can have some fun. So that was the difference in that game. Early down performance, avoiding third down, and when you get into third down, can you get into third and short? Third and longs will lose you games.
The Vikings are incredible because at the beginning of the year, we were like, man, this NFC North is going to be a bear. And it has been, right? Detroit has been exactly what everybody thought they were supposed to be. I think Green Bay has pretty much settled into where we thought that they would be. And I don't think any of us are going to be shocked if they rip off one or two road victories in the playoffs or maybe even a third and somehow get back to New Orleans. We all thought Chicago, because they added the special quarterback and the way that defense finished up last season, that they were going to have at least a shot at the wild card. That has gone miserably wrong in the Windy City. But then we were like, hey, I remember having this discussion with you guys. Minnesota, if that's your worst team in the division, that's a pretty damn good division. But none of us gave them a shot at most likely a winning record, and certainly not a 14 or 15 win season.
No.
And I give a ton of credit to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who is the architect of this team, and Kevin O'Connell is going to win Coach of the Year. He and taking care of the offense, Brian Flores doing what he does with the defense has been nothing short of sensational. And Sam Darnold, I don't know if you guys saw the video of him walking into the locker room where they sprayed him with all that stuff and they raised him. Like, this is some incredible shit, and I'm happy for him. I am so happy for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's where the three reasons why we didn't take them seriously going into the year was, one is they did lose some talent in like Danielle Hunter on defense, and then now they replaced it, but Danielle Hunter is like a beat, and Danielle Hunter has been a great addition for the Texans, and we didn't think Sam Darnold would do this. And the other thing was, like, the biggest thing was the division they were in, right? Where we were saying, like, they're probably third at best. But, man, like, Darnold has come in, and again, is Darnold perfect? Absolutely not. But he's thrived in this. You know, this team is just 2 years away from a 13-4 season with a bad defense. And now, like Justin said, the defense is fucking humming. And, you know, they're either going to win, lose 2 or 3 games and possibly have the number 1 seed. So it's thrilling. I think their offseason, depending on how their playoffs go, is going to be one of the more intriguing ones.
Oh, yeah.
With how they handle Darnold versus McCarthy, I think the easy answer would just be the franchise tag Darnold and make him do it again. That's why, like, when we talk about, like, before the Lions got hurt and we're saying, like, all right, who's like the best of the field, I think the Vikings are right there. Like, I have more confidence in the Eagles. I did more in the Packers even before this game. Like, I think the Vikings are, if not the favorite, just as much a threat to number 1 than anybody.
They also have a knack of winning close games. In the 3 seasons under Kevin O'Connell, 26-9 in one-score games. There's only one other coach with a minimum number of games coached that is better than that, and it's a Hall of Famer in Guy Chamberlain, who coached in the 20s. You don't have to look him up. I'm just saying he coached in the 20s when there were probably he was outstanding, where there were like probably 8 teams. So Kevin O'Connell has done an incredible job. He could probably go up to Ziggy Wilf's office and say, hey, how you doing? Like a contract extension. What's he going to say? No? I mean, the guy has revamped Sam Darnold. He's had the Vikings right in it every year, even when they had to start 4 different guys last year. At least they were kind of in the wild card discussion. He's done a great. He's my coaching crush. I'll admit it.
Oh, absolutely. And he was a coaching hire that was slandered in the moment. Like, not just like, oh, this guy's not qualified. It's like, how dare they make this decision instead of hiring other people. So, yeah, like you said, he should be able to go into Kwesi's office, get a contract extension, a suite at Yankee Stadium, whatever he wants.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to want that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's not going to want a suite at Yankee Stadium.
Well,
he might want to go to
Citi
Field and go check out Juan Soto, but that's for another discussion. All right, finally, Sunday Night Football gave us a great game between a pair of first-round quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels with the winner in overtime, 30-24 over the Atlanta Falcons, and Michael Penix Jr., who was making just his second NFL start. So what that did was it put Washington into the playoffs for the first time since 2020. It meant that Tampa Bay leapfrogs Atlanta in the standings, and now if Tampa wins at home next week against the Saints, they're NFC South champs yet again. If they lose, Atlanta with a home victory over Carolina would end up taking down the division. My question is, are you more interested in what's going to happen in the NFC South or the battle between Baltimore and Pittsburgh still for the top reigns in the AFC North? Justin Penik, let's start with you on that one.
I need the Bucks to make the playoffs. I can't. I know people are a little bit infatuated with Michael Penix, and I am too. Like, just to see how he does, but I think for the sake of what makes Wild Card Weekend so special, it is a sacred weekend. I think it is one of the best weekends in all of sports. I do not want to have to watch the Atlanta Falcons play whoever they're going to play and probably get their ass kicked in the first round of the playoffs. I do not want to watch it. I want to watch Baker Mayfield, and I want to watch Baker Mayfield sling it and possibly beat and upset whatever good wild card team that they're going to play.
Hey, one of the teams that beat the Lions, maybe at the wild card, Lions end of that wild card. Yeah, I mean, it has to be the AFC North race. Like, to me, I'm more interested in those matchups to see if the Bengals can beat the Steelers and have a chance. Some rooting interest on Sunday. But you have either the number 4 scoring offense in the Bucks or the rookie QB Michael Penix, who's looked solid with a plethora of talent around him. And the defense is not great, but they certainly can make some plays. Jesse Bates can change the game. Matthew Judon's been heating up, a little bit down the stretch.
Wait, timeout, by the way. I have a question for both of you. I think the Atlanta Falcons blitzed last night more than they have all year combined.
Mm-hmm.
It was I'm like,
they're
where did
using
this go
those
from?
linebackers to their advantage,
which is awesome. It's like, where's that been, man?
Yeah,
they've been very passive.
Yeah, they have been, and I don't hate. I kind of like Raheem Morris, some of the stuff he does, but yeah. So I'm interested in both. I do think having the number 4 scoring offense, Bucks hosting a playoff game, is the better option. If Michael Penix is real deal, we'll see this Falcons team in the playoffs in the near future, so we don't need to rush him into that position year one. But yeah, the Bucks are the answer. But the AFC North, I'm not interested in that all that much. I'd like the Ravens to have home field advantage so they can have their best opportunity. Not home field advantage, home game.
The Ravens are going to win that division. They play, all 4 AFC North teams play on Saturday. The early game, interestingly, is Baltimore-Cleveland, which I get because it's not nearly as sexy as the nightcap because the game's going to mean something to Cincinnati regardless. But if Baltimore wins that first game and they're favored by almost 20 points, I think was the early line, then the division's over. So the Steelers might be like, okay, whatever. We'll get our guys a little bit of a run, get their blood flowing and then get them out of here and get them ready to be on the road. The only thing that, and we could talk about this later in the week, the Steelers have to win in order to get that 5 seed, which means you go to Houston instead of going to Baltimore. So I guess actually the Steelers will play the whole thing out, even if they don't win the division, right? That's the only thing that I'm interested in the AFC North.
I would think so, especially with Mike Tomlin as the head coach, that if they have something to play for, they'll go out there and play for it.
Yeah. Okay.
But like you said, and I'll end up picking the Steelers against the Bengals, and it's kind of going to ruin the whole Sunday for viewing interest for everybody. And like you said, the most interesting thing about the AFC North matchups is the Bengals. It's not really the Steelers versus Ravens part of this. But I am super interested to see, one of these NFC North teams. NFC South teams. I'm interested to see either one of those teams in the playoffs. Where if it was the Kirk Cousins Falcons, I wouldn't have been interested at all.
Yeah, Penix has certainly breathed some life. I thought he made some great throw. His first touchdown pass in the NFL with, just a minute to go or whatever to Kyle Pitts was fantastic. I thought that was great. And I thought he did some really, really good things. But the way that Baker Mayfield and that Bucs offense is humming along, and Bucky Irving, the year that he's had, and the fact that Jalen McMillan has stepped up, when Chris Godwin went down for the year, we were like, oh my God, Mike Evans is going to get double teamed, and who else are they going to throw to? And he's been sensational, the rookie out of Washington. And Baker, give him a ton of credit. What did he throw for? 350 something and 5 touchdowns, and most importantly, no interceptions. He has been great. He's got more than 40 touchdowns in total on offense this year. And yeah, whether it's Detroit or whether it's Minnesota that would come down, that is a game that you are not going to want to miss. That'd be awesome.
I mean, the Bucks beat Detroit this year, right? So, like,
Yep.
when we like to see it'd be round 4 of these two teams in the last 2 years. So, you know, a rematch of last year's playoff matchup. So, yeah, I want the Bucks in there over the Falcons. So please don't choke against the Saints.
Please.
All right. Is there anything else before we get out of here that kind of stuck with you from over the weekend?
See, you did a good job on that Patriots.
Thanks.
So I'll be honest, I was at the Pop-Tart Bowl, so I got to hear your
good
voice
for you.
through highlights. But I saw you, like you said, just missed the Darius Davis touchdown. The Pop-Tart Bowl, I got sold on Cam Ward just being there, and then the Giants ended up winning a game, and then
you got your heart ripped out.
Like, why couldn't you have done this the day before I went and watched Cam Ward live and in action?
By the way, did anybody have a problem with Cam Ward tapping out at halftime?
Yeah, me, because I wanted to watch him in the second half. That's my reasoning, is I just wanted to watch him play football. And I'm a Miami fan too, even though I don't really care that much about them. They should fire Mario Cristobal. But yeah, but in reality, no.
Okay. Penik?
No, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. I don't either. Who cares? Everybody's going to be like, oh, my God. NFL teams are going to look at that, and they're going to be like, what, is he going to quit on us?
I was more offended by the sacks that Shedeur Sanders was taking than Cam Ward dropping out of the second half.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about him wearing his Giants cleats all over the place?
I had one of my biggest tweets ever. I tweeted out, I was like, Shedeur put on Giants cleats, and his life immediately started falling apart.
Nice.
So that's basically what happens once you put on Giants cleats. So, welcome home, Shedeur.
Oh my gosh! Listen, it's fun stuff. You know, I think the NFL has done as good a job as it can with the scheduling for Week 18. That always gets a little tricky. The late window, Denver hosting Kansas City, Miami and the Jets obviously is a big game. You got a few things that, you know, in terms of seating that are obviously up for grabs, but just not that many spots available in the dance card. So, and Monday night, but I know we're taping this before Monday night's game, and I asked this question to MJD on Game Day Final Sunday night. Would you, if you were Dan Campbell, sit Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, because the game in San Francisco means nothing. And if one of those guys sprains an ankle or something and you don't have them for that huge game against Minnesota, you're screwed. Just real quickly, Bobby, would you sit your guys?
That's so tough because that. No. Keep the momentum going. Go boat race the 49ers, beat their ass, and then roll it into the next game.
Penik?
I think there are certain guys that if they're hurt and they're banged up and you know it, maybe you're careful with them. But I think you play it by half. I think you go. I think you plan on going. But if the game is at a certain point at half, then I think you start thinking about it. But I lean no. Like, go play the game. But if there's a guy that's too hurt, then, you know, give him a week to rest. Like if Zadarius Smith is really banged up, then, you know, give him the week.
The hits hurt as much in the first half as they do in the second half sometimes. I understand it. Like, you can't play scared, but all I sit here and think about is, what if in a meaningless game, Jared Goff, you know, breaks a finger on somebody's helmet, and then everybody's going to be like, well, why'd you play him? And if his answer was, we wanted to keep the momentum going, that ain't going to work.
No.
You know, that's not going to work for next week and beyond. So I imagine it's one. I don't know, dude.
They could get hurt next week too in the do or die game, and then they're screwed for the playoffs. So
I know, but that is a do or die game. That is a meaningful game. Tonight means nothing. Zero.
Tell that to the players. They'll disagree.
I think Chris Rose is convincing me. I think I'm now on the rest them tonight team.
I hate being the guy that wants to play scared, but yeah, I think you have to be smart about it too. I think Kansas City, and we'll discuss this later in the week, has a much tougher decision than Dan Campbell does tonight. We'll get into that. We can't wait to touch on it. Week 18 is almost here. Hard to believe. For Justin Penik and Bobby Skinner and producer Connor doing a bang-up job, I am Chris Rose. We will see you Friday here on Football Today, presented to you by Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL.